Hi there, thanks for joining me today. My name's Jo and I'm an independent Stampin' Up demonstrator and I'm based in Norfolk in the UK. Today's my Monday mashup and we're going to be designing both of these cards today using the split stamping technique and also the Stamparatus. So let's get going. Okay, so today we're using the stamp set called To a Wild Rose. This is in the annual catalogue. It's been with us quite a while now. It's one that I was really privileged to be able to demonstrate at on stage, which is one of our organised conference events. It's a really beautiful stamp. It's got some lovely dies with it as well. It's actually one of our two-step stamping sets, so you can actually create sort of depth and background into it by using your inks. But today I'm going to be colouring it, but it's just a sort of different way to use it. So the technique we're using today is called split stamping technique. So for this I'm actually going to be using the Stamparatus. Now it is quite important that you have some kind of stamping platform to do this technique, just because it makes your life so much easier. It'd be very, very difficult to line everything up if you didn't have it. So this is where we're going to start. We need 2 base cards, so you actually get 2 cards for your buck this time. So it's 1 lot of colouring, 2 lots of stamping, and you'll get 2 cards from it, and you'll see they really are pretty once they're done. So these are just thick basic white, so they are a standard A6 card. So they are 29.75 centimetres across by 10.5 wide, and then scored at 14.85. Now, if you're using imperial measurements, you can just simply use your standard card size, because you'll see we're going to be covering the whole thing. So just your standard card base. So equally, you could use a different card size completely if you wanted to. And then you need 2 pieces of cardstock that are going to cover the front of your actual card front. So in the UK, in metric measurements, these are 14.85 by 10.5 wide. As I say, if you're working in imperial, just use your standard size card with the standard size that will fit directly over the top of the card front. Okay. So we're going to start off, I think we're going to start first of all with our Whisper White piece here. So this is actually Whisper White, sorry, not Basic White that I'm using. Whisper White has unfortunately had to be discontinued, so Basic White is going to be our new white standard cardstock. I'm waiting for my delivery to arrive, so I still have some of the Whisper White, so that's what I'm using today. So the stamps that we're using from the set are this one here and this one here. Okay, so what you first of all want to do is to cut yourself a mask. So I have just stamped this onto a scrap of paper, just a normal copy of paper. I find this better than almost using like a post-it note or something like that, because it's just that little bit thinner, and you want to cut it out directly on all of the edges of the lines. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is to decide where I'm going to stick my actual rose. So I'm going to do 2 roses and then I'm going to do several leaves. Okay, so I'm going to do 1 here to start with. This is a little bit fiddly in the sense that you need to clean your stamps in between your stamping. Okay, so bear that in mind. I'm just going to get myself a wipe so that I have one close to hand. So first thing I want to do is, once I've decided where my first one's going to go, which I'm going to go here, I'm going to put another one sort of here and then have some sort of leaves going from it. So I'm just going to close the lid and pick up my stamp. Sometimes it does cling a little bit to the card, so just make sure it's butted right up into that corner. As you see, I'm just holding it down with one of my magnets just to make sure that it's nice and secure. And I'm using Memento ink because I'm going to be using Stampin' Blends. So this is our Tuxedo Black Memento ink. So I'm just making sure it's got a nice covering of ink on it. The beauty of using these stamping platforms is that if you don't get it right first time, you do get another opportunity. So I'm just going to make sure that that's all stamped down nicely. I'll just lift it just to make sure. Yes, that's absolutely fine. Okay, so I'm going to remove that for now, and I'm going to bring in my Daffodil Delight piece of cardstock. I need to clean my stamp completely to make sure that it is nice and clean, just to remove that black ink. So the next colour I'm going to use, I want it to be tonal, so if I use the Daffodil Delight it wouldn't stand out enough for me, so I'm using Bumblebee for this. It just gives it that slightly darker edge than you'll see as we go on, why we need that. So I'm just going to stamp again my flower onto my Daffodil Delight piece. So now I know that these two are stamped in exactly the same location. Okay, so I'm going to leave that there because obviously that's my I can go straight in with my yellow one this time, and I need to remove my stamp, so I'm just going to make sure it's nice and dry. And I also need to bring in my mask, so I'm going to place my mask on top, and then I want to position my next rows. So you can pop it where you like, but I'm sort of going here, so I want to have some that's at the top and some that's at the bottom, if that makes sense. So I'm going to pick that up again, just make sure that that's all in place. Make sure that my mask is also in place. As I say, I'm just laying it over the top. It doesn't have to be too precise. So now I'm just lifting that down, and I've stamped that as well. So as you can see, that one is slightly in the background. Now can you see here it's not inked as well? That's because it's probably because it's close to that edge. So I'm just going to close it again and just give it another little push, and then you'll find, there you go, so it's stamped nicely this time. So I'm going to remove that, and I'm going to bring back in my white piece, just making sure you keep them up the same direction, that's the only thing. So again, I'm going to place my mask onto my sheet here. Oops. And then going to use Memento again. So again, I'll just ink in this, just making sure it's got a nice covering all over it. And then I'm going to put it down. I'm going to concentrate on that area that didn't stamp as well last time. So there we go, that's our flower. So we've actually finished with our flower, so I'm going to leave it there anyway, and I'm going to bring in the actual leaves. So I want to arrange several leaves onto my piece here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off with one. So I'm going to go sort of here, I think. So these are going to go off the page, and what I'm trying to avoid is that the leaves go over the two pieces, because then I'd need a second mask. So I'm just going to pick up that stamp, just going to make sure that that's held down. Now what I want to do is make sure the mask is over this one here, because this is where my leaves are going to be. And again, I'm inking with black Memento. I'm going to stamp those leaves just off to the side of that rose, so you can see that they'll be poking out from behind that rose there. Okay, so again, I need to swap over because I need to now do it onto my yellow piece. So again, place my mask on top. Make sure I clean my stamp really, really well, because this is going to now have Bumblebee ink on the top. So Bumblebee, make sure that your mask is in place entirely. Okay, so that's stamped that one. So that's good, and you can see it's lined up perfectly there. So that's really good. So now I need to put another one on. So I'm thinking where I want my leaves to go. So I'm just going to give it a quick clean and a quick wipe, because I want to make sure that I haven't got any moisture on there. So this one I'm going to pop off to this side here, I think. I may come around a little bit because I think I'm going to do another one up here. So again, just make sure it's nice and secure. I'm going to pick up my stamp. I'm going to place my mask in place once more. As you can see, the stamping it is a little bit fiddly. You have to sort of think about what colour you're going to do. But once this part is done, then it's all quite straightforward from there in. So it's worth persevering with. Okay, now again, I'm just going to push a little bit more onto that one. That's it. Lovely. Okay, so I'm going to clean that off. And I'm going to bring my white piece back in. Making sure it's nice in place again with my mask. And this time we're going with Memento. So remember, it's always Memento when you're doing it onto your white, and Bumblebee when we're doing it onto our yellow. I'll stamp that one down. Okay. So I'm going to add one more, I think, up sort of here, sort of this area. I'm just going to try and perhaps do one leaf so that it doesn't interfere having to make a second mask. You could, of course, make a second mask. You know, they don't take that long to cut out. And that way you could sort of put them across the two. But I'm just wanting the one leaf really this time. So I'm just going in here, making sure that it's not going to go over anything, which it's not. Just going to pick that up. Sorry, I just had to double check then. I wanted to make sure that this corner of this leaf wasn't interfering with this one, which it wasn't. So I just need to make sure that stamp is inside of those lines that are going to be masked. So again, just pop it down. To work out which way they go. So that's going to go there, so that now when I ink this, although I'm only wanting the one leaf, the other two aren't going to interfere because they're going to be on top of the mask. So that just makes sure that obviously they're not going to interfere. Okay, so that's that one done. So that is actually finalised. That's the one we need to colour. But I do just need to finally put that final leaf onto my yellow piece. So again, just quick clean off. And then I'm going to ink it in Bumblebee. Don't forget to place your mask in place. And there you go. So that's all of our stamping done as far as that's concerned. We will be stamping our greeting a bit later, but that's as far as the actual lining up is done. That is now all done. Okay, so I'm going to pop that to one side, and I will obviously clear that later. So now what we want to do is to concentrate on actually painting and colouring in our flowers and leaves. So I'm using a mixture of colours. For the actual rose itself, I'm using light and dark Daffodil Delight, and I may also be adding in a little bit of Mango Melody. I do have trouble saying that, and this is the dark version. Okay, so that's those. And then for the actual leaves themselves, I'm going to be using my favourite, which is Granny Apple Green. I always think it's a really nice, vibrant, fresh green, so I really, I really like that. Okay, so we're going to start off, first of all, I'm going to start off with the light and dark daffodil, and then we're going to bring in some of the mango to add some highlights to it. So starting with the dark, I'm going to start at the bottom of my leaves. Sorry, petals, not leaves. I'm then going to start bringing in some of the lighter. As you notice, I'm not going quite to the top there at the moment. And I'm using almost like little circular motions just to make these blend really nicely together. So what I want to do now, I'm actually bringing in my colour lifter, and I just want to make sure that I soften those edges. So the tips are going to be actually sort of have a white effect on them. Okay, now what I want to do is I'm just going to go in with a tiny little bit of the Mango Melody. Now I find this just deepens that centre of your petal, so it just gives you that nice vibrant sort of 3D sort of look to it. And then if you find that you get sort of a dark join line here, you can just mix it in with a little bit of the dark daffodil again, and then that will just blend really nicely together. Okay, so I'm going to start again. I'll take all my lids off because it'll be far easier. So this is my dark one here. So this is dark daffodil. And again, just putting a reasonable amount down because I want it to be sort of really vibrant. So it's, it's got a nice layer of colour going down to it. And again, just going to use that colour lifter just on the edges, just to soften them really. If you find that they soften a little bit too much, you can always go in and add a little bit of the lighter yellow again, which is what I'm doing here. So I've just done some more white just to make it moist so that it actually sort of blends really nicely together. And then mango again, just into those centre parts, just to add that depth. And as with anything, I don't work on the petals that are next to each other. So I'm working sort of independently of them, so making sure that they don't touch. It's just to prevent any bleeding really. Sometimes you get a horrible bleed with the alcohol because it's a moving thing. It sort of moves forward. You do get some bleed if you're not careful. So just bear that in mind. More here. You'll find with stamping blends, the actual quicker you actually work, the better they are, because they don't like too much sort of hanging around. So whilst they're still evaporating, if you're adding more colour, then they will naturally blend just that little bit better. So it's worth thinking about, is just to not actually take too much time, just kind of really sort of have a quick sort of motion with it really, and you'll find they will just naturally blend just that little bit better. You can always go back and blend it some more, but actually the quicker you work, the easier it becomes to handle and manage really. So you can hopefully see, because I did that quite quickly, it naturally blended together that much quicker. So it just saves you having to worry about it too much, really. Daffodil Delight is not a colour that I go to a huge amount, actually. So it's actually quite nice to be using something that I'm not very often used. It's such a vibrant, lovely colour that yeah, it's works so well with this technique. Okay, so that's our roses now done. So now what I want to do is just to do the leaves, and these are just done in exactly the same way as virtually as what I just did for the flowers. So I'm going to lay down my dark first. Some people prefer to use the light first, and that's absolutely fine as well. There's no right or wrong way, it's personal choice. So don't you know, don't think if it's not working one way for you, try it the other, because sometimes you'll find you just need to work the other way. It's just how it is. So you know, don't think you've got to do it a certain way. And as you can see, I'm just blending in those centre sections so that they're nice and dark in the centre, but then they get lighter towards those edges. Okay, so that is now all our leaves done as well. So now what I want to do is I'm going to actually do the greeting that goes across the centre, and then once we've done that, then we can start putting them together. So I'm going to pop those to one side, and I'm just going to be using some black cardstock. I've got a piece that's cut off from another project here. First thing I want to do is just to give it a quick dust, just to remove any oils or anything like that. Okay, so I need a Versamark ink pad, and I'm going to be using white embossing powder. And the greeting I'm going to be using is taken from the Peaceful Moments stamp. This is, let's see, I've had my ink lid on there. There we go. So I'm going to be using this one, Life is Better with a Friend Like You. It's one of my favourite sort of greetings that we have in our stamps, really. So I'm going to be using that. So I'm just going to ink this in Versamark ink. And I've got 2 cards, remember, so I'm going to stamp in the middle here because I want to be able to adjust where I fit it once we're finished. So I've done one. I'm just doing one quite a little bit further up just to give me plenty of space to cut and so forth. So I'm using white embossing powder. So I'm just going to sprinkle some embossing powder over the top. Just make sure that it comes off nicely. Now, despite using the Dust Buddy, as you can see, you still do get sometimes little specks where you don't want them. So like here, for example. So I just got a little brush and I'm just going to have a little brush and then give it a little blow just to try and remove them. You're never going to remove them all. It is an impossibility with static and things like that in the room, lights and everything else. So just get off what you can, but I wouldn't honestly worry too much. You'll find yourself, if you do too much, then you'll end up wiping it away. So just, you know, obviously do what you can. So I'm just going to heat set this now. Okay, so now they're done, I'm just going to bring in my little cutting mat, and I'm going to use a knife and a ruler to do this, but you can use whatever you wish. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to cut across. I'm actually going to start with this bottom one here. I want to cut straight across the bottom here, but I have two big tails on my F and F here. So I'm just going to cut across till the bottom of that sort of L there. Then I'm going to continue my cut until I meet that tail, and then I'm going to continue my cut across. I am just about to go off my mat. There we go. So what I've done is I've cut it, but I've left these sections here, so then I can just pop in with a knife and cut round those longer letters, because what I don't want to do is to cut across my F, but equally I want to have quite a thin border, so it's just a way of achieving that. So I'm going to do exactly the same again, coming back in the opposite direction, but this time, as I say, I want to just make sure that this is equal depth as far as I can see. I'm going to come down just a little bit. So I'm quite happy with the depth. I'm just going to cut across until I sort of reach letters that are sort of sticking up a little bit more. I'd rather leave some because I can always trim it with the scissors, and then cut across again. Okay, so you can see if I come in from this end, I need to trim across a little bit more and just cut around the edge of that D. And then I've cut across again. I mean, if you want to do this all in scissors, of course you could, but I wanted to have a straight line, so chances of me cutting in a straight line are probably pretty slim, so that's why I used the method that I did. And I'm just going to actually remove that so that I can see it a bit better. So again, I'm just going around the F and then round the top of the L. Okay, so as you can see, what I wanted to achieve was a banner that wasn't too wide, but it actually held the tops and bottoms of the letters in it. So I'm just going to repeat that for the second one, because remember we've got two cards. Okay, so there you can see I've now got two greetings for my cards. Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to actually cut these in half. Now, I'm actually not cutting them directly in half. I want to make sure that firstly both of these are up at the same direction, and I'm going to cut them at the same time, so I'm absolutely certain that they're going to be cutting together. So what I want to do is at 5 centimetres, so this is the bottom, so 5 minutes up from that bottom, I'm just going to cut across like so. Okay, so now I need to bring in my card fronts. Okay, so what's going to happen is these are going to sit like this, and this is going to go across the center like that. So basically what you've done is you've created two pieces which you've cut in half or just under half, and then we're going to break them up with this greeting in the middle here. Now the reason I made these a bit longer is that we can actually position these to a degree kind of where we would like them. So by doing them in the center, it just means I had a little bit more flexibility. So I'm going to glue these down. Now you can see, because I use the Stamparatus, obviously everything automatically lines up, whereas if you were doing it, it would almost be impossible to do it by eye. I think you would really struggle to try and line anything up. So I'm just going to add some glue to my strips, and just before I set it down, I think I'm going to go over to the left a little bit on this one, so I'm going to make sure that that is to my right, and I actually want to line it up just above the join, really, just so it kind of hides that really well. And I'm just going to chop that off at the back. That's one for you. And then this one, so again, you can position your greeting perhaps a little bit that way if you wanted to on this one, or again you could do it over here. Obviously you're limited exactly where because of the end, but it's entirely up to you. I think as I did that one that way, I'm going to do this one very slightly this way, so it's over the top. And this time I'm going to line it up directly on the join, so it's just slightly lower. So there we go, that's our cards actually made. What I also like to do is to add a little bit of our Wink of Stella, because they really make the flowers pop. I'm just going to put them on the flowers. I'm not going to put them on the leaves. And just by just putting a nice thin layer down, they just pop off the page. They're absolutely beautiful. So I'm just doing it on the coloured ones. I'm not doing it on the actual yellow. Although I suspect it could look quite pretty. Perhaps I'll do it on one so we can see what it looks like. So yes, perhaps I'll do it on this one here. You can be quite sort of free with this, because it's so sparkly that it kind of just glistens, so you don't need to be overly precise with it like you would if you were painting. Actually, yes, that does look really pretty. I don't know if you can, whether it'll pick it up on the camera or not really. You can see that's just the one with the shimmer. Hopefully it will pick it up. And this one is with the shimmer on the daffodil as well, which I think actually looks beautiful. So I'm going to go ahead and do that on the other one. So I'm not doing the leaves, I'm just doing the flowers, just to give a bit of sparkle. So there we go, that's our cards for today. I think the other thing I might be tempted to add is just some little gems or something like that, just to add a little bit of sparkle. Actually, I found some little pearls. I think these might look quite nice. They're quite sweet. They add something a little bit different. And what we can do is we can actually colour them. So I'm going to colour them in the dark Daffodil Delight. This will only be quite subtle, but it'll be quite nice, I think. So I'm going to add 3 of those size, and then a couple of this medium size. Stamping blends are great for this because they can, you can really colour them any colour you want to, and that applies for the actual gems as well. So I'm just going to pop them down. I would normally wait for these to dry a little bit before I started lifting them, but just want to so I think I'm just going to leave the 3 there on the white section because they're naturally going to stand out more on the white section. So I think that would be probably the best thing to do. So I think I'm going to start with one here. Take my larger one. And then this one just down here. So there we go. So that is now the cards finished. I hope you like them. As I say, it's called the split stamping technique. All you have to make sure is that you actually everything is lined up fully so that everything will automatically coordinate. It's a really fun technique, and as I say, you can make your cuts wherever you want to, so you're not limited to sort of a halfway or nearly halfway. You can have a little small section at the bottom, but obviously you want to make sure you've got enough of the coloured area to come through, otherwise it will get a little bit lost. So as I say, I hope you like that today, and thank you for joining me, and I will see you next week. Take care. Bye.